Former Trump advisor Hope Hicks was forced to travel to New York yesterday and testify against her old boss as the kangaroo court continues its assault on the former president for alleged hush money payments made to the adult film star Stormy Daniels way back in 2016.
The prosecutors calling former Trump top advisor Hope Hicks to the stand.
It was a very dramatic day in Hope Hicks's testimony. And remember, she was subpoenaed by the prosecutors to come onto the stand, so she did not come voluntarily. And it was quite emotional at times, but they spent a lot of time talking about how she and the campaign were reacting to the leak of the Access Hollywood tape, because they're trying to lay the foundation here to show that subsequently the hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels was a direct effort to downplay any more sensational stories about Trump's relationships with women before the election. There was a tape introduced at the end of the day yesterday of Michael Cohen talking with Trump about setting up a vehicle to make payments, and it was unclear in that context what he was exactly referring to. The thinking is that the prosecutor is setting up that tape so that Michael Cohen can then be called to the stand and explain what it meant.
The show trial has become even more absurd, if you can believe it, as the prosecution called the porn star Stormy Daniels herself to put on a lurid show in her so-called testimony against the former president.
Stormy Daniels' testimony at Donald Trump's hush money criminal trial compelled the former president's lawyers to ask for a mistrial. Trump's lawyers told Judge Juan Merchan that Daniels went far afield of the ground rules that were established for her testimony. Trump's lawyers objected when they felt that she was going beyond the scope of what had been established as the ground rules. She talked about the sexual encounter in details that she was not supposed to, they argued. But Judge Merchan, in denying that mistrial request, said the defense did not try hard enough to object and prevent that testimony. Susan Nicholas asked Stormy Daniels if she wants to see Trump in jail. And Stormy Daniels said, yes, she did. If he's found guilty in this case, he should be punished. Daniels will return to the witness stand on Thursday. The trial is off on Wednesday.
And it isn't only the state of New York abusing its power to pursue a political enemy. The state of Georgia, as we've been talking about, is doing so as well. Despite having been shown to be corrupt herself, Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis recently went on a tirade against Donald Trump, calling his supporters disgusting and vowing to prosecute Trump at all cost.
So I don't care how rich you are, how powerful you think you are, who your daddy is, what your political party might be, how much money you think you got, and how evil your supporters are. I don't care how many times they threaten me. I will gladly leave this place knowing that I did God's work.
God's work, yeah. This all just seems like just maybe the Democrats are shredding the Constitution, right, to go after a political opponent. Trump, the victim in this sort of drama, has some choice words for his accusers.
I have to watch every word I tell you people. You ask me a question, a simple question, I'd like to give it, but I can't talk about it. Because this judge has given me a gag order and said you'll go to jail if you violate it. And frankly, you know what? Our Constitution is much more important than jail. It's not even close. I'll do that sacrifice any day. The government just said that they want 2 to 3 more weeks. That means they want to keep me off the trail for 2 to 3 more weeks. Now, anybody in there would realize there's no case. They don't have a case. Every legal scholar says they don't have a case. This is just a political witch hunt. It's election interfering. And this is really, truly election interference, and it's a disgrace.
Speaking of the Constitution and defending it, we're now joined by attorney Dave Shestokas. Dave is a lawyer representing one of the men accused of election tampering in Georgia in that RICO case, along with President Donald Trump. And Dave has written several books on defending the Constitution, so he's the right person to be talking to, its constitutional sound bites and creating the Declaration of Independence. Both are must-haves, especially today. Get it, especially for your children, because they're not even going to understand what the Constitution is, Dave. Great to have you here. It's just such a sad day in our country.
It is generally a sad day, Emerald, and thank you for having me back. Thank you for having Pastor Lee originally when this whole fiasco broke. We appreciate that. However, while it's generally a sad day, there is news from Georgia today that took place, and that is that the Georgia Court of Appeals agreed to take up the interlocutory appeal of Judge McAfee's denial of the disqualification of Fani Willis. This is huge news in terms of what's going to go on. Technically speaking, the Georgia Court of Appeals had until May 13th to make a decision as to whether or not they would entertain an appeal of McAfee's failure to disqualify Willis. But today they issued a one-page ruling that said they will entertain the disqualification issue of Fani Willis. And so they get to take this up what they call de novo. That is that they're not bound by any decisions that Judge McAfee made. They can redo the evidence. They can review all the evidence. And there's a reason to believe that the Georgia Court of Appeals may, in fact, do the right thing and, in fact, disqualify Ms. Willis in this case.
So you think it's a good signal that they made the decision to take up the case prior to the deadline to decide to do so?
Absolutely. No, they had until May 13th was their deadline. So I suspect that it was important that they decided more quickly than the law required them to do it. It's what they call an interlocutory appeal. Interlocutory appeals are something that happen while a case is going on and before there's an actual decision in the case. They're very, very rare. They do take, in Georgia, the rules required Judge McAfee to approve the taking up of an interlocutory appeal to the Georgia Court of Appeals. And then once Judge McAfee allowed that to go forward, the Georgia Court of Appeals itself had 45 days within which to make a decision as to whether or not they would, in fact, entertain this interlocutory appeal. And today they issued a one-page ruling that said, yes, they're going to do it. And most of the defense folks are very optimistic that the Georgia Court of Appeals will do the right thing. It's not the same. They're not in the same position as Judge McAfee.
Let me ask you, we're talking a lot today about that state election board meeting yesterday where they presented the findings from an investigation into the hand audit, where there was thousands of duplicate ballots found that went for Joe Biden. That changed the margin, right, in what was already a slim margin. And then they also found lots of violations, over 140 to be exact, with the machine counts and the recounts. Really, Fani Willis's case, including that against your client, really hinges on this idea that this was a clean election and that there were no violations and that there wasn't a problem with the count. But that narrative that premise has completely been blown apart with the findings of this investigation and the investigation or the complaint filed by Joe Rossi, who we spoke with at the beginning of this show. Does this have any bearing on your client's case?
It may, but at the moment, while Judge McAfee is going through the motions of continuing to move this case along, in the believing that there's a possibility that Ms. Willis may not be prosecuting the case and making decisions based on the presentations of her office, don't make a whole lot of sense. And so a whole lot of things in Georgia are on hold. As to Pastor Lee in particular, we have a motion to sever his case and sever his trial from the rest of the group, or at least from 15 of the other defendants. And Judge McAfee's never ruled on that. We've never even had a date to set to argue that. There's also what they call a demurrer. If you remember, there were six of the counts against the president and 3 other defendants had been previously dismissed based on what in Georgia is called a demurrer, but in many places they call it a motion to dismiss. And we have a demurrer pending relative to Pastor Lee as well. That's never been argued nor ruled upon. So there are a whole lot of things going forward before we ever get to whether or not there's actual situation with the votes in Georgia. which brings me, it's very strange. I have a personal experience there because I was working on the election integrity matters for the Georgia runoff that took place on January 5th, 2021. And maybe we'll come back and talk about what I think really happened on January 6th is when they stole the Senate from the United States Senate while everybody was going on there, because Georgia is just an utter mess. I worked with the Dominion machines there. I know the problems personally. So none of that is a surprise to people that have either an open mind or have actually been involved in this. What's surprising is that there's beginning to be some fair hearings, and that there's some people actually allowing things to go forward. I have an election contest here in Illinois based on a variety of things, and I've been fined a $35,000 sanction for filing an election contest. So they do whatever they can to fill the King Henry VI line from Shakespeare. The first thing we do is kill all the lawyers. So there's a lot going on when you need to pop your head up. But regarding I do think the most important news is the Court of Appeals deciding that they're going to take this up. The consequence of the Court of Appeals disqualifying Ms. Willis is, in fact, that everybody in the office gets disqualified. There's nobody in that office that gets to pick up the case and go forward. And what has to happen then is that there needs to be another constitutionally elected district attorney from someplace else in Georgia that would, in fact, be appointed to take over the case. As people are talking, it's hard to believe that there's any other Georgia prosecutor in their right mind that would pick up this mess. And so
you don't think from one of the other blue counties would just pick up the mantle?
I'd say, given what's happened with Ms. Willis and given the mess that the case itself is in, if anybody were to decide that they were going to become involved in that, I doubt that they would pick it up as is. They'd kind of have to start over from the beginning, because if you remember, Mr. Wade was disqualified, and Mr. Wade ran the grand jury. Okay, the grand juries that returned the indictments were run by Mr. Wade, who in fact has been disqualified. And Mr. Wade had every incentive to, in fact, get indictments, because if he didn't have indictments, he was off his gravy train. So you don't pay prosecutors based on success; you pay them based on justice. And so we haven't even gotten to the point of where the indictments are going to be challenged because of wage disqualifications. There's a lot of things that are going to happen. It's not going to trial before the election, I can tell you that.
That's what I was going to ask you, the timeline that we're looking at with this appeal.
Yeah, well, the first answer is this will not happen. This case will not be on trial before the election. That's for certain. And the Court of Appeals, the only deadline for the Court of Appeals was to determine whether or not they were going to take up the interlocutory appeal. The Court of Appeals does not now have any kind of deadline as to making a decision on the disqualification issue. So they can now take their own sweet time. But the signal in taking it up, if they weren't going to go in the direction of disqualification, they could have just denied the interlocutory appeal and let McAfee's ruling on that issue stand. So there was no real reason for them to take it unless they're considering tossing her off.
This is very encouraging, especially for your client. And we're running out of time, but I do want to remind our audience that you're representing a Lutheran pastor from Orlando Park, Illinois, whose name is Stephen Lee. We featured his situation on our show a while ago. He was accused of intimidating a Georgia election worker during the 2020 presidential campaign. We have about 30 seconds. Can you just tell us how Pastor Lee and his family are doing? We'd love to know how he is.
He's optimistic. I was with him last week. He's feeling very optimistic. He's jovial in that regard. On the other hand, how would you feel, even despite the fact that we have that relationship, if you got up every morning and you didn't know for a fact that the charges that could send you to prison for 20 years were over and done with? I mean, it's hanging over his head each and every day. It's nice to be optimistic, but that certainly colors your outlook on life.
I can't even imagine.
But his real answer always to that question is God is on his throne. That's a direct quote from Pastor Lee.
Oh, I love him. Tell him we're praying for him. Give him our best. Look, we're going to have you back very soon because I want to go through what you said about the Senate runoff in Georgia, and I want to get more into the constitutional questions here. Thank you so much, Dave Shestokas, for joining us today. Let's come back very soon.
I'd love to be back. We want to talk about the Declaration of Independence when we come back. So thank you so much, Emily.
I love
Good
that.
to see you.
All right, the reason we can bring this kind of exclusive coverage to you in the state of Georgia that you're not seeing anywhere else is thanks to Mike Lindell and his employees at MyPillow. They're running a special just for our viewers. You get a free gift with purchase. That's that multi-use MyPillow 2.0 Go Anywhere pillow. That's going to be great for this summer. That's a free gift to you from Mike Lindell when you use promo code TRUTH. That's promo code TRUTH. You can call the number also that you see at the bottom of the screen and tell them you want to use the promo code. So you get that free gift with purchase, and you also get the $25 extravaganza discount. Plus, you get my favorite moccasin slippers for a major discounted price that I've never seen before. Go on today. We appreciate you, and that's the absolute truth. We'll see you tomorrow.
I'm excited to announce we're having a huge MyPillow spring sale, and here's a few examples. Buy one of our MyPillow 2.0s, you get another MyPillow 2.0 absolutely free. Made with cooling technology, the best pillow ever just got even better. And this just in, 9 brand new colors and styles of our Percale bed sheets. They're made with the finest long staple cotton, and now you can save 50% or more. That's as low as $24.98. And for the first time this year, I'm bringing you our My Slippers and Sandals for as low as $25 a pair. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get your MyPillow 2.0s. Buy one, get one free. Percale sheets as low as $24.98. My Slippers and Sandals as low as $25 a pair. And for a limited time, when you order $75 or more, your entire order ships absolutely free.